So our guest today, Arnold Donald, is the President and CEO of Carnival Corporation. Arnold, it's truly a pleasure having you with us. Thank you for once more having accepted to be interviewed in Miami. You've attended in the past our event in Toronto, Montreal, in the last 5 years in Miami. Previously, we've heard from you that Carnival Cruise Line was doing well. The industry was doing actually excellent, was on the right path, but suddenly that crisis, that sanitary crisis happened 6 months ago. What was the impact of the COVID-19 on your industry, and more precisely on Carnival Corporation and all of the vendors, the partners, the parts you're dealing with?
Well, first of all, Nicholas, hi, it's good to see you again. It's great to be part of the World Strategic Forum's International Economic Forum of the Americas once again. And I have to thank Juan, for that very powerful testimonial he just gave for the reintroduction of cruise and the kind words he made about myself and the industry. So thank you, Juan, and thanks for everything that you do, both for cruise, but also for maritime more broadly there with the Port of Miami. Yeah, so the impact, Nicholas, has been absolutely devastating for travel and tourism, and of course, especially for the cruise industry. I mean, we have zero revenue as an industry. We have no guests sailing. And so it's difficult to run any business when you have no revenue. In addition to that, we had, of course, a number of cancellations. So a lot of the cash that we had in terms of deposits, some of that was returned. Luckily, a lot of the guests love cruising, and many of them chose to take future cruise credits instead. In some places in the world, that's automatic. But in many places, the guests do have the option. And we're all very grateful that many of the guests expressed their confidence in the future of cruise by choosing future cruise credits rather than cash refunds. So it's been a big cash drain for the industry. More importantly than that, just ourselves, we had to repatriate over 80,000 crew members back to their home countries. We had to do that at a time when borders were closed, airlines weren't flying, and the rules were constantly changing. We would have people on a charter aircraft that had previously been granted permission to fly to a particular location. And while people were boarding the flight, that approval to fly in was revoked. And so then you have to move those people again. And so it's been a daunting exercise, but, the spirit of our people, the cooperation of many people around the world, has allowed us to successfully repatriate over 80,000 crew members. So it's been a devastating time, but at the same time, it's been encouraging. We've been overwhelmed with the heartfelt support expressed in writing and phone calls, videos, other things from guests all over the world and from partners all over the world and other stakeholders all over the world, saying how much they love our people, how much they care for them and are interested in their well-being, and how much they love, our 9 world-leading cruise line brands. And now we've gone through the 4 phases, Nicholas. First was just, number one, our highest responsibility and our top priorities always are compliance, environmental protection, the health, safety, and well-being of our guests, of the people in the communities that we touch, and of course, the members of our Carnival family, and that's our shoreside and shipboard personnel. And so our first phase of this, when the pandemic first, broke and the world was reacting, was of course to get our guests home safely while keeping our crew safe in the process. The second phase was cash. We had to make sure that we were prepared to withstand a hiatus in operations. So cash conservation and additional liquidity. So we've raised now over $12 billion in the capital markets over time. And then the next phase after that, of course, was to prepare for the pause, to make sure that, we had minimum manning on the ships, but adequate manning to honor our commitments to compliance, environmental protection, and health, safety, and well-being, and that we were taking care of our assets for the day when we'll be able to resume again. And then the final phase is preparation for resumption of cruising, and that's the phase we're in now as we look at potentially beginning to cruise next week in Italy.
So to be more precise, what do you think, what's the future of the cruising industry looks like within the next year? Do you see light at the tunnel within a year, within 2 years? What's your feeling? What's your vision on this?
I think if you ask me in a 5-year period of time, that would be an easy. There's pre-COVID, there were over 500 million people a year vacationing, and there were 30 million people a year taking cruises because that's all the capacity that the industry had. So 5 years from now, it's easy to imagine that we'll be back where we were before, completely sold out with the capacity we have, and giving people a tremendous vacation experience at a tremendous value. And that's been the legacy of our industry, and it's been a strong and growth industry. And of course, as you know, we kind of outpunch our weight class in terms of we're a relatively small industry, but one job on a cruise ship creates 5 to 7 other jobs in the rest of the economy. And so we're a big economic multiplier in many places around the world. We are the economic engine for those economies and therefore for the quality of life and the people in those locations. So that's an easy answer. Over the next year or so, that depends. So it depends not on cruise, but on society at large and how society is dealing with and experiencing the virus and the pandemic and the reactions to it. So as people begin to socially gather more and are returning to social gathering behaviors, then as that occurs, the opportunity for cruise will present itself. As people are not doing that, then obviously there's not going to be much opportunity for cruise or other forms, frankly, of leisure travel. So over the next year, I expect to see a beginning of reintroduction, a few ships at a time going to certain destinations and locations as the mitigation of community spread continues, probably moving itself from east to west, just as the virus did in the beginning. And so we expect to see the brands slowly introduce over the next year or so and begin to return to normal in the years thereafter.
So my next question, Arnold, is probably one of my favorite is among my top 3, if I may say so. What has to happen, do you think, to make your ship sail again? And let's try to be creative here. Let's speak more, not as much on a vaccine perspective. Let's go towards more innovation. What sort of innovation of new technology are you waiting for that will permit you to resume your operation? Something that the next day you will say, we're back on. We're back in business.
Again, for us, it's not so much innovation, but I will share some things with you. It's not so much about the innovation. It's really about where society is in its risk tolerance with COVID-19 and where we are in terms of having mitigated the spread of COVID-19. Today, there are plenty of technologies to allow us to do what would be necessary to give people no greater risk than if they chose to do similar activities shoreside. And our aspiration, of course, is to have them experience even less risk aboard a cruise ship than if they were doing those similar experiences shoreside. And there's plenty of technologies in place to do that already today. As these things evolve, I think the critical evolutions will be primarily in the area of testing and in therapies. With regards to testing, very inexpensive tests that are quick, 5-minute tests, 15-minute tests, $5 or less. That kind of testing capability would obviously be great worldwide and would certainly be helpful for the cruise industry as well, because it would alleviate a lot of the concerns that some of the health authorities around the world might have, because this virus has proven to be a bit stealthy in terms of how it spreads. People could be completely asymptomatic, but potentially could still be spreading the virus. So a quick test that's accurate and low cost would be a huge accelerator for mitigating the spread of this disease, and a huge accelerator for having people be even more comfortable, taking having people cruise again. So that would be one. Another one, of course, is a vaccine, but the vaccines are going to take some time. Even if the vaccine, whenever it comes, and there'll probably be multiple vaccines. At one point, a few weeks ago, I had a science summit, a global science summit that we hosted together with World Travel and Tourism Council. And at the time of that summit, there were about 165 vaccine candidates. 27 of them had, moved into human trials. And at that time, there were 6 that were in phase 3 clinical trials, the final stage. So we're more than likely going to have multiple vaccines. Vaccines historically have been 50 to 70% effective, and historically, about half of the targeted population would take a vaccine. So if those numbers, were the numbers projected going forward, and of course the numbers could be different in this case, but if they were those numbers, then it would still take some time for a vaccine to make its way through the population. So I think the nearer term thing is accurate, fast, low cost testing protocols, which would probably be, the quickest things. And we are looking at a number of them. In the meantime, we're prepared with our ships in Italy to have testing capability on board for a limited number of people, to have testing for a large number of people at the point of embarkation, to have the protocols on board in terms of physical distancing, mask wearing. Of course, we had some other protocols already in place because we've had to deal with viruses around the world for many years in terms of, hand sanitizing, overall hygiene, deep cleaning, air filtration, and so on. We had a lot of those things in place already. And we're going to modify the ships a little bit to be prepared in the event that there is a COVID case on board where, if it's in the community, more than likely, eventually you're going to have it on a ship. But just like in a community, if it's handled properly, it doesn't have to automatically lead to widespread contagion on the ship, and it doesn't have to lead to everyone on the ship having to be in quarantine if it's identified early, managed properly, and you have the other protocols in place to mitigate spread. And so that's the way forward in the short term. In the communities where they're ready to sail again, where they have low levels of community spread. So you start with a low level to begin with. The testing makes that even lower, and then the protocols further mitigate the spread.
So, Arnold, how this crisis has changed your management style? Am I today in front of a new and improved Arnold Donald? How has it changed the way you deal with things, the way you're dealing on your daily operation at Carnival Corporation?
Well, like everyone in this crisis, we've learned a lot. We had been told before this crisis that we would be able to raise over $12 billion of capital in the financial markets in various forms, from senior secured debt to second lien debt to convertibles to common equity, et cetera. And we could do all that virtually with no one in an office, not the investors, not the banks, not our own people, nobody in an office. We would have thought that was impossible, but we did it. And so, like a lot of people, we're learning how to work differently. I think one of the challenges in this new work approach is that it's never ending. So you start very early in the morning and you go very late at night, and then there's Groundhog Day, you do it all over again. And there's one call to the next, or one Zoom, or one Teams meeting, or one WebEx meeting to the next. And so obviously that's not sustainable for a long period of time for everyone either. And so we're going to have to find new ways to work to introduce breaks for people so that they're not constantly on 24/7. But it's been really, in a lot of ways, inspiring. I am so proud of our people. The way they managed getting the guests home, the way they worked together to get, themselves, the crew, home. Our shoreside employees who have been going nonstop, who have seen many of their colleagues, furloughed or gone through, a workforce reduction, and who themselves have sacrificed in form of compensation and so on, but still have been committed to, the core values that we have as a corporation. And that has been so inspiring for me and motivating for me. And I can't thank them enough. And then all of our stakeholders, again, the guests, our trade partners, the travel agent communities around the world, our other partners like Juan at Port of Miami and other leaders in ports and destinations around the world. Just the human spirit, the rallying cry, we're in this together. We all stand together to mitigate the spread. We stand together to weather this storm and to come back, even stronger and better than we were before. It's absolutely inspiring and motivating.
So we are clearly in a storm right now, in a crisis, and as many management gurus have said, in every crisis, there is something, lessons you can get out of those crises, take away from those crises. Some crises are harsher and tougher than others, and clearly this is one of those tough ones that not a lot of people have seen coming. So what would you say is one of the main lessons that you can take away from that crisis that you will apply now or will permit you to view things differently?
I think is the many lessons of the past reinforced. Number one, empathy and respect for your fellow man, for your fellow human beings, and in the end, we are communal. I mean, we're joined at a human spirit level, and I think first and foremost is just that reinforcement of respect and have empathy for each other. So that's number one. Then after that, from a pure business standpoint, look, we came into this very strong. We had a top credit rating. We had a lot of cash on hand. We had good practices in place, and so we came in strong. But looking at it, we could have been even stronger. And I think our people all realize that now. We could have been even more lean. We could have been, more conservative in some areas than we have been. We could have worked differently, which we've learned from this. That would be more efficient and overall better for the business. So I think there's those types of learnings. And then there's the learnings of reinforcement of learnings, around communication, not just communicating out, which is very important. People need frequent communication. They need to have a feel for what's going on, what's known and what's not known. You don't have to know everything. Sometimes people just want to know that you don't know. And here's the situation. Here are the things we don't know. But communication the other way, listening. Listening is one of the most underrated skills on the planet. And if you listen very carefully and you're quiet around you and you listen carefully, the world will reveal itself to you. And it will, reveal to you what actions you need to take, when, where, and how. And so, just the practice of listening very carefully. So in a crisis, it's really important to listen because everybody has a contribution to make. And it's the collective diversity of thinking and application of that gets you through a crisis. And so, those are some basic fundamental skills that I think are reinforced in times like these.
Well, I think you should definitely write a book on those, quite frankly, as I told you previously. But Carnival Corporation is all over the globe. You're in Asia, you're in Europe, you're in Oceania, and obviously you're all over the Americas. But precisely your biggest market, I believe, is Central America, the Caribbean, and Mexico. So
how do you engage with the leaders of those regions to know their concern and to in a way to secure them as well for the future? What's your engagement and how do you engage with them, and what do you hear coming out of them, and how do you react to it?
Well, as you say, Nicholas, one of the most popular destination markets, for cruise are in the Caribbean and Mexico, Central America. I mean, we take, people from all over the world. There are millions of them every year into those that region of the world. And so it is really important that we listen to what those destinations are experiencing and what their needs are. And so that's how we engage. So I have had multiple conversations with the various prime ministers, premiers, et cetera, throughout the region. And those conversations start as you would imagine it would. It's not about the business. It's about, how are you? How's your family? What's happening in your country with COVID? What's happening in with your people? And how are you doing? And of course, a number of them are doing well, and a number of them are struggling because they're dependent on travel and tourism as a primary driver for their economy. And then a number of them have limited resources to deal with, a pandemic, to deal, with the medical fallout. So these are real challenges in a number of areas. And of course, there are several in the area that are well equipped to handle and manage this as well. And so you have to listen individually and hear carefully, where they are. And then we do our best to listen and how they would like us to come back. What are their criteria? And then we share with them our current thinking and knowledge. And we try to be very science and fact-based. But these places, they have to deal with not only the science and facts, they do have to deal with emotional reaction, from the communities that they serve. And so you have to balance all of that. And we're working closely with them so that when we do return, we return in a way that works for them, that supports their needs, that is contributing to the betterment of, their communities. Because, if we do that and we do that well, then we will be successful. And if we don't do that well, then we will not be successful.
I was asked by many of our guests and clients that are a client of yours, actually, ask you the next question. What will be the experience on board one of your vessel when you will resume your operation? How will it be? Will they notice change right away, or what's the experience will be like?
Again, it depends when we resume and where. So as we look at Italy, obviously there's testing protocols in place right now that we are voluntarily doing as we resume with the cruises in Italy. Whether those same testing protocols will be deployed in future cruises in Italy or elsewhere remains to be seen. And what will determine that is the science and the state of the pandemic, in the communities that we're going to and the source markets we're taking guests from. Will determine whether that'll be necessary, whether it's prudent, whether it's appropriate or not. So this thing is evolving and it's changing, and we should expect that. But mainly what people can see that will be common with what existed prior to COVID is it'll be a great guest experience. It'll be fun. It'll be opportunities will be created for lifelong memories. The essence of cruise, the thing that makes cruise authentic, will still be present. Yes, people may have gone through a few more hoops to get on the ship. Yes, they may have some additional protocols while on board in terms of wearing masks or seeing plexiglass between them and, the person they're interacting with at guest services on the ship. They may, see greater evidence of cleaning protocols, even more signage around hand sanitizers and that type of thing. They may see a little more distancing from their fellow guests in certain restaurant areas on board, or maybe, fewer deck chairs, up on the Lido deck near the pool. So those things could happen. and probably will happen with their early new sailings that are occurring in the near future here. But over time, we'll see what science and understanding of COVID-19 delivers in terms of what will make sense going forward. But the essence of cruise has to be there. It has to be fun. It has to generate lifelong positive memories for families and connections of people. Those fundamental things, will have to be there.
I was told we have time for two last questions. So
Okay.
You've been as a great advocate for diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
I'm watching the news. I've been reading a lot last few weeks, few months. It is an issue that is troubling me. It's an issue that the world is facing right now. What are your views on this? It's a very wide question, but I think it's an essential question to ask you and to get your opinion on this.
Communities thrive overall in many instances when businesses thrive, and I'm a business person. And businesses thrive over time through innovation. And innovation, by definition, is diversity of thinking. And that's what creates, innovation, out of the box thinking, diversity of thinking. And diversity of thinking is far more likely to occur when you have a diverse group of people doing the thinking. So outside of, social justice, which I'll speak about in a moment, just from a business imperative standpoint, diversity, because diversity of thinking is critical in any business for it to sustain itself over time. Diversity is a critical element and aspect of a long-term, sustainably successful business. And diversity and inclusion is critical in business, but it's also critical in society. And, there's something about the human condition that through the centuries, for some reason, people always seem to feel like they need to be above someone else. They need to feel superior, whether it's caste or whatever, type of thing. There seems to be something in the human condition that produces that, winners and losers or whatever. And so you see social injustice throughout the world. And here in the United States, you see it on TV every day now with what's going on with Black Lives Matters and other things. But this is a condition that exists around the planet. Here is expressed in that way. In other places, it's expressed, with different ethnicities or nationalities or, backgrounds and experiences. And so the way I see it is very simple. It goes back to what I was saying before about respect and empathy for your fellow man. And the realization that in the end, we're all here and we're really all the same. And that's what I love about cruising. That, we take people, we bring people together from all walks of life, all backgrounds, all ethnicities, all nationalities. And our crew is from 145 different countries. We go to 700 destinations around the world. And we bring people together and they discover what they have in common. And then they learn to appreciate and celebrate the differences rather than to fear them. And I think that what's happening has been going on for a long time. It's not new. The fact is exposed again, is hopefully a catalyst for more change. But it's been going on for a long time. I grew up in the 60s and people marched arm in arm, white and black together for civil rights. And there were so many injustices and the injustices continued. And they happened before what you're seeing on TV today. It's just being revealed, but these are injustices that have been going on for a long time. And so we have to stand together as people, as one community, respect our fellow man, look for ways to live together and support each other. These are just words. And in the end, it's the actions. So I'll end with this on that. In the U.S., one, there needs to be police reform. What does that mean? That means deep inspection on how police officers are recruited, deep inspection on how they are trained, and deep inspection on the follow-on actions after training to ensure that they've been prepared for the stressful situations they're going to find themselves in, so that we mitigate, the abuse of the power that we see expressed in some of these instances. Beyond that, people have to vote. They have to put people at all levels in government that reflect the values that they want to see expressed, in their communities that they want their children to grow up in. And beyond that, we have to create opportunity. And that's where I circle back to the business. You have to create opportunity for people to have a quality of life. They have to have job opportunity, educational opportunities, et cetera. And so actions that specifically address those things are a way forward for not only the United States, but every place in the world. It's not a secret formula. It's not a formula that's not well understood. It's not a formula that's not well recognized. It's just a formula we have to step up to and actually execute.
This is great. This is very inspirational. Arnold, my last question. What will be your first destination when everything will be back to normal, when the cruise ship will sail all over the world again? What will be your first destination you will sail to? And obviously, you'll be boarding either from the port of Miami or the port of Everglades. What will be the final destination? You decide to be politically correct and do multiple stops. But what's your destination?
Well, that's almost an impossible question to answer. So, we have new ships that are coming. We still have the Mardi Gras that'll be coming soon. We have Iona, which hasn't launched yet in our P&O brand, Mardi Gras and our Carnival brand. We have new ships coming later this year in our Costa brand and so on. So we have a number of new ships coming. And depending on when we can travel and what we can do, obviously, we have, naming ceremonies, et cetera, for those ships and they sail. And so that could end up being the first ones just because of the timing. If you're asking me the different question is, what would be the place I would want to go to first if I can go anywhere and it's completely open? Then my first choice next cruise would probably be Antarctica on one of our brands, our Seaborn brand. In a year or so from now, when we have our expedition ships available. And I look forward to going to Antarctica and taking the submarine under the ice cap that we'll have on board and having some adventures like that. But there's so many beautiful destinations and places to go. And, I will enjoy whatever the first one is.
Well, this is great. So, Arnold, this comes to an end, but look, it was a pure pleasure, very an insightful conversation. As a user of Carnival Cruise Line myself, as a representative of many clients, it's I have no doubt that everything will be back to normal soon, that you'll be back with a smile, that everything will be fine. So thank you for being with us.